Shalom, brothers and sisters from wherever you're watching us from. Welcome to another episode of Tuko Tayari. Today we are doing chapter 5 of Genesis. And before we start looking at Genesis, last week we had some good time looking at the life of Cain and Abel and the story of sacrifices and how Cain brought sacrifice to the Lord. Actually, sacrifice of because he used to cultivate the land of fruits, but he did not bring what was best. But Abel decided to bring actually the fat portions and the firstborns of his flocks. And the Bible says that God was pleased with Abel's sacrifice, and he had favor in the sight of the Lord. And also we talked about how Cain was not able to master his sin and what conspired to the death of his brother Abel. And guys, we might be on the same place where Cain was, and you know how the story has been flowing until God pronounces curse unto Cain, and at the same time pronounces curse to anyone who is supposed to kill him or who will dare kill him. Our prayer is the Lord will help us to master our sin. And today in this beautiful chapter 5, the Bible is taking us from where Adam is, that is before Cain and Abel, to a man who the Bible actually for the first time calls him a righteous man in the next chapter. That is a man by the name Noah. But again, before Noah, there lived another man who was also righteous. And I would want you to take time to read all the verses in chapter 5, but I'll be pointing out actually in verse 21 to 24. And the Bible says, when Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. And remember, Enoch was too righteous actually in the sight of God, and we'll see downwards. And also remember that Methuselah was the man who lived the most years in this world, because Methuselah lived 969 years. This is pointed out in verse 27 of the same chapter. Now the Bible says, after he had become the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters, which are not mentioned here. Although altogether Enoch lived 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. This is the first man after the fall of man whom we see him going to be with the Lord without dying or tasting death. And the only thing actually that makes God take Enoch is because of his faithfully walk with him. And the Bible states that he walked with him and he was no more. I want you to take some time and imagine how righteous was this man who would walk and walk with the Lord until he was no more. This man must have been so righteous. And think of it, amongst the favors the Lord made sure that he got and the gifts, he gave him a son, that is Methuselah, who lived more years than anyone else who lived in this world. And the Bible states actually in verse 25, when Methuselah had lived 187 years, he became the father of Lamech. After he became the father of Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Methuselah lived 969 years, then he died. No one else actually in the Bible has been recorded to have lived as many years as Methuselah. And look at this. Amongst the righteous people, actually, I've said it is the first person to be stated as righteous. Enoch is mentioned as faithful, not righteous. But Noah is actually talked of being righteous. And in verse 28 says, when Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son. He named him Noah, and said, he will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of the hands caused by the ground the Lord cast. After Noah was born to Lamech, Lamech lived 595 years, and he had other sons and daughters who are not mentioned. Altogether, Lamech lived a total of 777 years, and then he died. And then the Bible now starts the episode of Noah. And look at actually what the father named this beautiful son of his, saying, and he's pointing out and saying, he will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of the hand caused by the ground the Lord has cast. And he was supposed to bring actually relief to these people. Did Noah do this? We'll see this actually in the next chapter. So see you next week, same place, same time. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have a question or you have anything that you need to add about the chapter, feel free to do so on the comment section. May the Lord be with you. Shalom.